Hey guys, this is John from Walton's.
And I am not Austin Walton. I am Nick Hoffman from Nick's Wild Ride. And welcome to Meatgistics.
This is the Meatgistics podcast brought to you by Walton's.
Cheers.
Once again, we've brought beer back to the podcast, so this is going to be a fun one.
Woo.
And we've got Patrick behind the back of the studio.
This is where I would switch to my camera. if
He's
we had
also
a dual
drinking a
camera.
beer.
No, he's not. What are you talking about?
Where is your camera? Is it not working?
It's only a live stream thing, so I got to keep the fans guessing every once a month. So.
He hasn't shaved well recently. That's why he doesn't want to show himself.
I'm moving, man. I don't even really have a bathroom right now, so I'm mobile.
So Nick
that's
is
sad.
here because he was nice enough to come all the way out. So you were just in Spain.
That's right.
You want to tell the quick story about why you're here and how you got here?
Why don't I tell these folks who I am?
There you go.
Off.
Okay.
So I'm Nick Hoffman. I'm the host of Nick's Wild Ride on Outdoor Channel. I'm a country music artist. I'm a pilot. I'm a kind of I think I'm a nice guy.
Capricorn?
Yeah,
Gemini?
I am not a Capricorn. Hell no.
I don't know the difference. That's the one with most syllables.
I would say the jury's still out on the nice guy thing. We don't know.
Okay, very good. So that's who I am. And yes, I'm in Wichita because I'm a nice guy.
There you go.
See?
Yes.
See what we did
Good
here?
enough.
Carry on.
So he was here for Pass It On Outdoor Mentors, had their Bust a Clay event this past weekend. We're huge supporters of Pass It On. Nick was nice enough. You've been talking to Mike Christensen for...
Oh, yeah. Many years trying to get here. And it's... for those of you that don't know about the cause, it's an incredible thing. This organization takes young people out into the outdoors, introduces them to hunting and fishing and the outdoors in general for the first time. So, and mentors them into becoming more, into hunting and fishing in the outdoors. It's incredible. Like last year, they took over 1,500 kids that had never done hunting or fishing and took them out and introduced them to it. It's incredible. So I was a kid that grew up wanting to be in the outdoors and didn't have a chance to have anybody mentor me. So an organization like that is near and dear to my heart. So that's why I'm here in Wichita, because that organization is based here in Wichita, and so is Walton. So here we are. And
so we've been sponsors for 3 years now. We're going on 3.
I think it's maybe even longer than that.
Okay,
Yeah.
maybe 4.
Mm-hmm.
But I always describe you as two things. One, you live the dream existence for a young outdoorsman.
Mm-hmm.
Like you go on these crazy backcountry hunts that sound amazing. As I get older, I look at that. I'm like, oh, that sounds exhausting.
Yeah.
oh, good Lord. When does he get any free time? And then the fiddle, the pilot, like you seem like a person who does not like free time.
I believe it or not, I definitely, it's a catch-22. That's what you're getting at, right? Because I absolutely am a guy who has, I definitely am a jack of all trades and maybe a master of one. You know what I mean? I've heard like the term Renaissance man get thrown around a little bit, but I don't really necessarily, I don't know. That sounds like some sort of exaggeration, but it's like, I do a lot of stuff. I'm really passionate about a lot of things that have a pretty big, cast a pretty wide net, but and all of them take a lot of time.
Sure.
That being said, my wife would tell you that I complain all the time that I don't have enough time.
Yeah.
I don't have any downtime. Like you were just starting to say, I just got back from Spain 2 days ago, and here I am in Wichita. You know, and I really genuinely believe that a rolling stone gathers no moss, and I think that I definitely subscribe to the you only live once kind of mentality. I'm actually writing a book. We can talk about that later, but I haven't told. It's the first time I've said this.
Oh, breaking here!
That's also funny because when you said Renaissance man, my first thought was, I feel like you'd also have to write a book.
Yeah, and I actually I've literally haven't said this in public yet. I'm writing a book right now that is all about trying to minimize regret on your deathbed. Trying to kind of fill your bucket before you kick the bucket. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how I live. And I only got one shot at this, and I want to make sure that I check as many things off my bucket list as I can.
Do you have a working title yet for the book?
That's none of your business.
Yeah.
No, I think that's the name of the book. It's none of your business.
No. Hitting stores everywhere.
Are you going to recount some of the events from your hunting experiences?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like, it's there's going to be a lot of stuff from anecdotes from my life and anecdotes of that I've heard around campfires from other people's lives. And then also I'll interview, other friends of mine and celebrity friends and various stuff about things that are, equally applicable. So that's about all I can say about that right now.
Yeah,
but
that's
I'm excited
awesome.
about it. And it just goes to your point though. I don't have enough downtime, but as soon as I want to complain about it, I just remind myself that, I grew up in a farm community. I could be roofing, or could be farming, or I could be, trust me, those are noble feats. But I'm really happy I'm not doing those things because I did all that stuff, So I love my life. And as soon as I want to complain, I just realized that, oh yeah, by the way, I just got back from Spain. Like, how cool is that? You know what I mean?
So what were you doing in Spain? Tell that.
I was hunting for chamois, which the chamois as they call them, little tiny goats that are way high up in the mountains and hard to hunt. And
like 15,000 feet? Is that
not
right?
quite that
Not
high,
quite that
probably more like 8 to 10 kind of thing. They live in the rocks and the mountains are incredible little animals, great to eat.
Yeah.
And of course, speaking of meat, I mean, Spain is the meat country.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They care. We did in between hunt. One day it started raining, and I was really bummed out. I was like, man, we're almost out of time here. And my outfitter and guide, he was like, I'm going to take you somewhere special. He takes me to this butcher shop in the middle of nowhere. I'm talking about BFE Spain.
Yeah.
And this butcher shop is the most incredible butcher shop I've ever seen in my life. And he had these entire sides of beef, 3 months dry aged, tomahawk steaks, hand cut right in front of you. They were 3-4 pounds a piece.
Yeah, cooked right there.
And no. Then we took it to a bar.
Okay.
That was 200 plus years old. I'm not kidding. Just
awesome.
Like place looked like it'd been rubbed down with ham. You know what I mean? Like it was just, and it was, and then they literally cooked down a bunch of dense wood, whatever. I'm not sure what kind of wood it was.
Okay.
And then we cooked those steaks over the coals.
Yeah, that was.
And I just posted that. Yeah, you can see it on my Instagram, and it was incredible. And that's just the kind of thing you can't find that anywhere else. Spain is all about the meat.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Every meal is sliced jamon, which is like a dry aged ham, sliced beef, it's just beef and wine, meat and wine. Meat and wine.
Right. Yeah. They do more than just beef. But Iberica, all that stuff.
That stuff's incredible.
A lot of that originates from Spain.
Mm-hmm.
One of our favorite things to make years ago was Spanish chorizo.
Yeah.
We just make tons of it.
Absolutely.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Iberica is literally the Iberian Peninsula.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
and what is it?
Spain.
It's acorns only, right? That's a pig that's been raised on an acorn only diet.
Yep.
So insane that somebody figured out like, hey, if we only feed this thing acorns, it tastes way better.
Yeah. I we're getting already sidetracked, but talking about meat. One hunt I did several years ago was in Hawaii, and I shot it wasn't with my bow. I shot a pig, a wild boar that literally was eating only macadamia nuts, and it was in a macadamia nut like plantation.
Yeah.
So this thing was we shot that thing, and then they cooked it in the ground traditional style. So they put a fire over a bunch of like river rocks, and they heat the rocks all up. They burn everything down to coals and hot rocks. Then they take wet banana leaves and put it over the rocks. Then they put the pig whole inside there, and then they cover it up with banana leaves again. Then cover that up with dirt, and you let the whole thing cook. And
for about how long? Do you remember?
All day, pretty much.
Long time.
And then when we went and pulled the pork, the fat that came off of that was pure clear.
Oh.
From the and you could smell the macadamia nut, and you could taste the macadamia nut in the meat. And it's like, it's the same thing with the acorns is my point. And it's like, those are the things that I love about my travels, is experiencing cultural food and experiencing how we're talking about the same animals, beef, pork, chicken,
sure.
For the most part, everybody's eating the same meat for the most part. I mean, I've experienced pickled seal intestine in Alaska and things like that. But that's a whole nother story. But I love seeing the different preparations. And then I try and bring a little bit of it home. I don't have a macadamia nut orchard to feed pigs in, but I love it.
Was that something where they asked you to come in and like, was that pig causing damage and like, hey, somebody's got to get this pig?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both on Hawaii. They're pigs. Once wild boar get introduced into an area, you can never get rid of them. But those wild boar have been there since Captain Cook introduced them. When first white explorers came to Hawaii, they dropped off oxen, kind of these Vancouver bulls they call them. They dropped off goats, sheep, and now they have their own species kind of that have evolved of these goats that have. Of all those different animals there. And the wild boar are one of them. So to answer your question, they definitely are. Depredation's a problem.
Sure.
But it's a part of that pig in the ground thing that they do there. That's been part of their culture for hundreds of years.
Yeah, they're famous for it
Absolutely.
At this point.
Yep, absolutely.
Kind of when you think about, or at least when I think about Hawaii and I think about foods, it is pineapples, macadamia nuts, and pigs.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is the way it goes. You mentioned something. It was the first thing I wrote down that I wanted to ask you. One of the things I really enjoy about your show, obviously the hunts are amazing. It's great. But you do a great job diving into the culture. Is there anywhere you've gone where you're like, this is an exceptional experience? I'm sure they're all exceptional. Absolutely. But like, I guess, do you have a favorite without posing?
Yeah, I get asked that question a lot. Yeah. And it's a hard one to answer because it truly, if you really are a student of culture, or at least an absorber of culture. Like I really fancy myself, and the television show is kind of in the Anthony Bourdain style. So for the people out there that haven't seen it, it's like an I very affectionately call it an Anthony Bourdain style hunting show. So I go somewhere, and the reason I go somewhere is to hunt. But the most of the show is about exploring history and food and culture of the place that I'm at.
Right.
And so if you're an absorber of history, if you're interested in history, each one of these places offers so much that it really is hard to pick a place.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
That's fair.
But that being said, there are some top 5 kind of things. Africa is probably at the top for me, or very close to the top 1 or 2.
Is there something specific that makes?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the main reasons is obviously culture and history. I mean, there is no more ancient place for humans or anything, than the dark continent. You know what I mean? And then when you start diving into, you can literally, like in Namibia, for example, where I've spent a lot of time, you can drive 2 hours and there's a completely different set of natives. There's still tribal, and they talk a different language, and they talk. It's incredible. Just a few hours in any direction. Then you start diving into the food, and again, we're talking about the meat, right? But the difference there compared to anywhere else is the meat is different because they do have beef, but the wild game there, all the antelope species, kudu, wildebeest, springbuck. All these different species that most people have never heard of, they are the staples. You go to a gas station, you get a biltong, which is like a jerky, right? Yep. And the biltong is kudu or Cape buffalo, or springbuck, and it's really interesting. So that's one of the reasons. The first thing that comes to mind for me is Africa, because not only is it culturally significant, but it's on a food level and on a meat level, it's unlike anywhere else in the world. The only place you're going to get those animals is in Africa.
Right there.
And there are no kudu anywhere else in the world. And all those antelope species, that have evolved there, they're only there.
So you were saying antelope, and then you mentioned wildebeest. Is wildebeest in the antelope family?
I think they're not part of the antelope family. I don't believe.
Okay.
But
I didn't know.
But it's
I've never heard that.
You have about I don't know how many. There's dozens of different antelope species from a eland, which is literally bigger than a buffalo.
An eland?
Yeah, it's called an eland. It's the world's biggest antelope species.
you're somebody who is always on the go. Like you've got the next thing to do. You've got the next thing to do.
And
so being forced to slow down.
Yeah. But I'm there and I'm experiencing the things I want to experience. Like history, food, culture, music, people. But that specific place forces you to slow down.
Okay.
And like you said, I need that in my life. So I do. I love it. I mean, they always say the first time I went to Africa they're like, oh yeah. I was like, whatever, I'll try it. And then somebody told me, you will be planning your next trip back on your second day. And I'm like, oh yeah, whatever. So on the second day, I'm sitting around the campfire at the end of the day and I'm talking to my outfitter. I said, so if I came back, and what would we do? It's true. Now I've been over there nearly a dozen times. Any
difficulties like getting visas, anything like that?
No, it's pretty easy for the most part.
How long is the flight?
It's long. Yeah. From Atlanta to Johannesburg is like 14, 15 hours. And then you still got more flights after that,
Now, as a pilot, once you get there and you're in those smaller planes, how are you feeling about that?
I love it.
Oh, you don't care?
I love
Doesn't
flying.
bother you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I put me in an airplane.
Okay.
It's like asking a vintage car person if they get in a Model T and worry that the wheels are gonna fall off. No, you're like, I'm in a Model T. Hell
This
yeah.
is awesome.
You know what I mean? So that's for me, that's what it's all about. God, we got off on the Africa tangent.
No, that's fine. We have no agenda. We'll talk about whatever we want to talk about. Any crazy pilot stories?
Oh man. Yeah. You ever go in here and then it falls out of the sky?
Just crashes. No, I definitely have never had any majorly scary things happen in planes, but I have experienced some pretty incredible aviation stuff over the years, both me getting to do some flying, but like, for example, the first thing that comes to mind is my first time in Alaska, and every time I've ever been in Alaska, those bush pilots in Alaska that you rely on to get you back into the backcountry to hunt things like sheep and moose, and they're incredible. They're the true modern day cowboys. They're grizzled old dudes that are pissed off that you're even there.
So they are exactly like in my mind who they are.
100%. They're salty old crusty dudes for the most part. I've only met one or two of them that weren't quite like that, and but they're so good at what they do. And as a fellow pilot, I watch what they do with just awe.
Right.
It's kind of like when we were at the Sporting Clays thing this today, and we were watching, you and I are out there shooting and we're doing okay.
Yeah.
But then you watch a real shooter, somebody who has spent their whole life working on this one thing, and you watch them do it. It's a thing of beauty.
It really is.
And that's I've seen some pretty amazing aviation stuff like that. Absolutely.
Okay. We talked about this really quick.
Yeah.
And I told you to stop telling me.
Okay.
Because I wanted this to be the first time.
Yeah.
You've been charged by a rhino, an elephant, and you said was it a bluff charge by a grizzly?
Oh yeah. I've been charged by grizzlies, brown bears, which is another kind of grizzly,
just bigger,
elephant, rhino, hippos.
All right. So I want to know about all of them, but my first question is, which one of those were you like, I'm in like the most danger?
The elephant.
Yeah.
That was really scary because it's a freaking elephant.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it was the way that happened was we were out following tracks on I think we were following Eland. And through this riverbed in Africa, obviously. And all of a sudden we came around this corner and there were 3 desert elephant in the riverbed. And of course your first intuition is like, wow, look at that.
Amazing.
I mean, I'm like 60 yards from the coolest thing I've ever seen. And then as we started to move on, they saw us and we saw them, and there was a little bit of standoff. And then finally, Mama Bear just decided, no, I don't like you. And she just started running at us and making the elephant noise and the whole 9 yards. You can actually see it on one of the episodes of my show. It's actually on film, and I say exactly what I felt when we got done. Once it was over, and she stopped about 20 yards from us, and when it was over, and my heart I caught my breath a little bit. I said, "Well, the coolest thing I've ever seen just turned into the scariest thing I've ever seen. And I'm glad it turned out like it did, because I think I just shit my pants. But I'll be able to tell that story in a bar for the rest of my life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How many people have been charged by an elephant? Not too many.
Not many at all.
Yeah.
How did a rhino charge you?
Same kind of situation. You're just out there hunting, and in a particular area, there are a lot of rhinos, and you stumble on them, and they're kind of like, "Hey, you're not supposed to be here. I don't like you." And rhinos don't necessarily come after you to be mean, but their thing is they don't turn around and run all the time. They just if their exit is anywhere near where they're just going to come right through you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I've had that happen several times.
I mean, it's a meat tank basically.
Oh,
right. It's got armor. It's got
They're literally dinosaurs.
Yep.
Little living dinosaurs.
Maybe so. All animals when they're baby, not all, most when they're babies are super cute. I just had my first interaction with a baby horse the other day.
Yeah.
So apparently the horse was like super friendly to people when it was first born. Loved everybody. A horse vet came, and as a horse vet does, they're not going to be gentle. They have a job to do. So it grabbed it, threw it to the ground, and got an IV in it, and held it down for a while. Well, it was not liking people after that. So I happened to come around a corner. It was laying down. There was a kitten there. I grabbed the kitten and like let it smell it, and was super interested in the kitten. So I just started petting it as it was smelling the kitten. And then I put the kitten down and I put its head in my lap. Yeah. And I was like, this is like special. So that was cool. A baby rhino might be the cutest of all the baby animals.
I'd just like to point out that you're like a modern day horse whisperer. That's
no, I'm
incredible.
definitely not.
Yeah,
no,
that's pretty incredible.
Definitely not.
Yeah, no, a baby rhino is the cutest thing ever. You go to zoo or see one of those things. I've never seen one in the wild, but it's like they're incredible.
Yeah.
They're just incredible animals, and that's the thing is like, all this hunting that I go out and do. There'll be probably people listening to this that they love to eat their meat, but don't necessarily know where their meat comes from.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And for me, that's fine. I each to their own. For me though, hunting is about so much more than killing. It's about all the things we just talked about. It's experiencing wildlife. It's experiencing nature. It's knowing where your meat comes from. For in my case, at my house we don't buy much red meat.
Yeah, mostly.
We're eating most stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love to go get a steak every once in a while, sure. But like, and it's not necessarily a source of pride. It's just who I am. It's part of who I am.
Oh no,
and I love that.
Pride. I don't. Pride, sin, whatever, but. When I get to make something here and I bring it to other people and they're like, oh, that's amazing. Like there's a feeling like, ooh, I did something.
I will give you that, even if I've had a processor make the stuff for me, if it's something that I went out and worked really hard and I have a memory attached to, and I harvested myself, to bring that to my friend, bring some summer sausage to a friend's party and say, this is an elk and I made this, or I hunted this, or whatever. That is something that I am definitely proud of,
as you should be.
And it's fun for me to introduce other people to that, because they go, this is really good. I'll be like, would you believe me if I told you that's elk?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's pretty cool.
We've talked about it in the past. They've done studies. It might have even been K-State did a study where they took a deer and a beef. They chose low-fat cuts, and they had it professionally processed and gave it to people. And it was something like 95% of people could not identify.
Especially like
difference.
We just made snack sticks today.
Yep.
If you've got that stuff in snack stick form or in jerky form or in, and if it's done right, not only is it, you can't tell the difference. It's almost imperceptible, but it's in a lot of ways sometimes healthier.
Oh, not even healthier. I would argue sometimes it's better.
Yep.
Some of the best snack sticks we've ever made are we used our taco seasoning and deer, and that was like Patrick still talks about that.
Absolutely.
One. We made goose pepperoni once.
Absolutely.
That was out of this world. We've made pheasant snack sticks. So yes, maybe sometimes better / just different.
Yep.
But some of them are just absolutely incredible.
No doubt about it.
Incredible.
I love it.
Okay. So I've got a bit of a thing. There's two animals that I'm interested / afraid of. And they're great whites, and then grizzly / brown bear is the other one.
Yeah.
Tell me the story about getting bluff charged, or did it come all the way?
Not all the way. I mean,
Okay.
because all the way would mean you ended up having to shoot it,
Yeah.
which that wouldn't be good.
Right.
You know, nothing good comes of that. The first time that I got charged by a grizzly was in
there's
Alaska.
multiple.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
my very first time in Alaska. I was just discovering the amazing thing that is Alaska, you know, and I had taken a caribou, my very first caribou, and we were butchering it. We were quartering it and skinning it and doing all the stuff. And we had, all of a sudden we look up, and up the hill about maybe, I don't know, 800-900 yards away, there is a grizzly bear and 2 cubs running at us.
Oh,
and they're
no.
not, she's not charging. They're just coming very fast because they're downwind and they're smelling the blood. And they're just coming. They're like, they're on a trail. They're like, the buffet is open.
How old were the cubs?
Oh, I mean, I don't know how.
Sub-adult still?
Oh, yeah. Little,
Yeah, okay.
Little. I mean, not like little, but like probably small dog size.
Oh, no.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
Not small dog.
So she's going to be completely
I'm talking
on.
like they're 50 to 75 pounds
Okay.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I look up and we just start yelling, "Hey bear, hey bear." We're just trying to get its attention.
Uh-huh.
And they were coming, they're coming. And finally, you know, I load my gun, which was unloaded. You know, I load my gun and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, this is the thing I read about in Field and Stream.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, this is it. This is like, I'm going to be a statistic here. And I'm overreacting a little bit,
Sure.
but my heart starts pounding and there's this adrenaline. So I rack a bullet in there and we're yelling, you know, "Hey bear, hey bear, hey bear." And finally, I would say 75 to 90 yards away, the mother bear stops. She hears us. And she stops and she woofs at her cubs, but they're dumb and don't know any better, and they just keep coming. Worst case scenario. And my buddy who's with me goes, "Oh no!" It's exactly, and it was like you could register. Everything slowed down, and I'm watching this whole thing go, and these cubs are coming and coming and coming. She's woofs again, and then she starts just running, and she's just running, and she gets out in front of those cubs, and at this point they're 50 yards away, and now she's looking at us, looking at them, and she turns around and she woofs at them, and they kind of stop there like, "What?" You know, and she starts to walk away, and she's trying to get them to
Follow her. Right,
her,
yeah.
but they didn't quite understand what was going on, so they're kind of looking back and they're looking, and she's looking at us, and then she decides to take one last false bluff charge at us, like, "Hey, get the hell out of here," you know what I mean? And I'm gun up, just kind of, I picked like a piece of grass, and I'm like, if she gets there, I got to start firing.
Nope.
And she just never made it to that grass.
Ooh.
Thank God. It gives me goosebumps thinking about it.
I can
now.
imagine. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's just, you know, but those are cool stories to have, just like the elephant, you know, but I hope it never happens again.
I can imagine.
You know.
But it did happen again.
Yeah, but not, I've had a black bear false charge me before. I've had a brown bear false charge before. They were nothing that quite that dramatic.
Right. A little bit more. Because brown bear, not quite, I mean, bigger. Yes.
Yeah, and they can be more aggressive too, especially when they come right out of the hibernation and stuff. Like, they're hungry, you know. But in this case, they're just scared. They're scared animals, you know, and they're trying to. You know, nature's just a big predator prey situation, and you just got to respect that.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
good stories to tell over a beer, though.
I can
like we're
imagine.
doing right
Or
now.
they definitely are.
Yeah.
All right. So you're uniquely qualified to answer this question. And Allie just walked in, and we have this
Hey, Allie.
ongoing debate within Walton's. Okay. And there are a few of the people in here who have the wrong answer to this. So I'm interested in yours.
Oh, I know exactly.
If there was to be a fight between a full-grown brown bear and a gorilla,
Oh God, why would I be uniquely qualified to answer that? Like,
because you've been charged by a grizzly bear.
That does not qualify me to do anything.
You're qualified.
Although I would have to pick the grizzly bear.
Of course, you would pick the
Because-
grizzly bear.
Have you seen Tarzan?
Oh God! See, this is what I do.
Rosie O'Donnell?
This is what I
Hollywood.
deal
That's
with.
Hollywood. I mean, like a brown
Ridiculous.
bear. I have touched and seen brown bear claws and teeth and paws and seen them in action doing, you know, fighting things, and those are the ultimate apex predator.
But like, what if there's vines around?
No.
But
no.
what if
See,
there's
really?
vines around? She just said.
These are legitimately the answers.
These are
I
the
get.
things that go through your head.
One of them said, "Oh, but the gorilla can deadlift like whatever thousands pounds." I'm like,
Yeah, don't get me wrong.
the bear has swords on the ends of its hands.
I mean, I don't want to screw with.
No.
I was about to say the F word. I don't know if I can do that. I don't want to screw with either one of those things.
Right.
That's what it boils down to.
But one, I would far rather get charged by a gorilla than a grizzly bear. In my mind, at least.
You got a chance, you can like use sign language with the gorilla.
Right. They're smart.
Yeah, because
They're like,
because just like in Tarzan, all gorillas know sign language. Yes.
Yeah, they can talk.
so gorillas are nice. If we're using Hollywood as the
Yeah.
gorillas are nice, bears are always the bad guys.
Yeah. Always.
Gorillas were not nice at first. Tarzan
At
was.
first.
Gorillas were not.
When's that?
They can't hear you. All right.
Oh,
So
my God.
has there ever been anywhere you've gone where you felt a little uneasy? Or maybe
Sure.
unwelcome is the better?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. There's been some spots in Africa that you know that they just look at you like you're not supposed to be here.
Mm.
I've definitely had that happen in a few places, in a few cultures, in a few cities, but I think that happens anywhere. It's no different than if you walk in the wrong part of New York City.
Sure.
Hell, there's probably a spot here in
In
Wichita,
Wichita.
that when you go there, that people look at you like, you, sir, are not from around here, and you shouldn't be here. And I think that's the common. So, not to throw my parents under the bus, but I grew up in a little farming community in Minnesota, and I really genuinely. I love my parents to death, but they're not as worldly and traveled as some people are, and they literally look at Minneapolis like Minneapolis is the pit of hell.
They're right, though.
Yeah,
That is my least favorite city. That is my least favorite city.
I love Minneapolis,
Oh,
but
he
it's
just ranted about
because they're like, well, that's where people get shot.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And that's where people. But that happens in every city.
Sure.
That happens in every place, and that's where the argument between my parents and I come. They're like, why would you go to Mexico? That's where people get abducted. Well, yeah, in certain parts of Mexico, that's where people get abducted.
Sure.
But that's not all of Mexico.
Not where you were going.
Yeah, or even if it is where I'm going, it's about protecting yourself. It's about being smart. It's no different than like we talked about when we were making this meat. There's a wrong way to do this and you're going to get sick.
Mm-hmm.
There's a right way to do it and you're going to be fine.
Right.
And it's going to be awesome. If you do it the wrong way, it's not awesome. If you do it the right way, it is. That goes for all travel. And being aware of it, trying to educate yourself. For me, it's really about finding good guides. It's about finding somebody who knows the local culture, the local places that you should be, you shouldn't be, what you should and shouldn't do, and listen to them. And so that's always been my thing, is like I just don't wander off into weird places in New York City by myself. I'm going to find a New Yorker and go hang out with them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just like you're how to do this meat stuff better than anybody. And I'm not just going to go start trying to make some sort of new snack steak by myself. I'm either going to go on YouTube and learn about it and educate myself, or I'm going to have good friends like you.
There you go.
You know what I mean?
Do you have a specific hunt? One of the stories I always tell, and I won't say much about it, but the time you were hired or brought in to go after a specific animal in Africa because of the damage it was doing. Do you have a specific favorite hunt that you did that was like that? They're like, hey, this animal is a problem. Not
Sure.
all of those other ones. Could
Yeah,
talk
and
about
that happens a lot in Africa. There was a Cape buffalo that had been wounded by a lion, and it was sitting. This is my first time in Africa. It was Cape buffalo was sitting on a trail in the weeds next to a trail where kids were going to school, and women were walking back and forth to get water from the river and everything, and the thing was just 20, 30 yards away from this trail. It had been wounded by a lion. It was hurt. Anybody that came by it tried to charge it.
Yeah.
And it had hurt a couple people. And they needed somebody to come and help with it. So we went and we took care of this Cape buffalo, and that's that was exciting and all. But my favorite part of that story is the fact that the next day I got to personally bring around every ounce of that buffalo to villages, and you can actually go on my YouTube and see some of it. And there was a person from the government there, and then the local head of the tribe, and he would go with us to each place we went, and he would say, okay, that family there has 5 kids. They need more meat. That's an old woman. This old woman gets this.
Right.
That young couple over there, they can take care of themselves. You know what I mean? And I watched a grown woman cry tears over a hunk of stomach lining. You know what I mean? And it's like, you don't realize we just take for granted that we can just go to the store and get meat.
Yep.
It's not like that there. And especially in certain parts. And it was really moving for me, so to be able to not only help literally save some lives, because they don't have the capability, they don't have the arms and the guns and the knowledge to go and hunt something like that.
So is that a law thing over there? Are they not?
No, it's just it's expensive, and they there's no reason for them to have it. And if they do have guns, it's just not big caliber arms that can take care of a Cape buffalo.
Yeah.
So, and then of course, then we get to eat it too. And then we get to go back to camp and fry up they made Cape Buffalo schnitzel for me. It's like, it was like incredible, So going back to the meat thing, I mean, it's like, that's one of my favorite things. I've gotten to eat all sorts of different kinds of wild game, and it's all interesting,
To this day, anytime we bring up mountain lion, I always bring up the story. The first time you were in the studio, Austin and I 100% would not believe you. We thought you were yanking our chain. You're like, no, mountain lion's my favorite meat. We're like, yeah, whatever.
No doubt about it. Still is.
And it wasn't until like I saw it 3 or 4 other times. I'm like, okay, maybe it is actually good. And we had a listener who's like, hey, I've got a buddy coming through Wichita. I'm going to give him some and we're going to drop it off for you. And we cooked it up. And it was like slightly more sweet, but really what hit more than anything was how tender it was.
Yep. It's like pork. It has the color and consistency of pork without as much fat, and it has like a sweeter type of flavor. I mean, literally the back straps, you make it like a pork chop, and I marinate it sometimes. Man, I think in off the top of my head, I've never actually made this list till just now, but like my top 5 probably meats that I've tasted, mountain lion is my favorite. Probably closely followed by doll sheep, which is really interesting because that's an animal that is old, and you would expect an old sheep to just lives in the nastiest conditions, and just it's just perfect.
Can you explain?
It's the perfect wild game. It's like a venison in a way because it's really lean, but it has a mutton kind of, it has just a tinge of that muttony kind of sheep flavor, but not the way that if you ever have like a lamb chop, you can taste the lamb. Yep. It wasn't like that. It was less, it was just enough of it, but a lot less of it. And it had, it was just tender and flavorful and juicy and just, I don't know. So that's my second. Third is probably blue wildebeest in Africa.
Blue wildebeest, okay.
Yeah,
I didn't realize they came in different.
Yeah, blue and black. Okay. And there's other kinds too, but blue wildebeest, like marinated and just seared on, like lightly seared over some open coals, is some of my favorite stuff I've ever had. I know there's a lot of people out there that would argue with me about this, but maybe it's because I hadn't had real meat in 2 weeks in the backcountry. But when I shot a mountain goat in British Columbia, and we got back and we took sticks and sharpened sticks and skewered them and cooked pieces of. We made skewers of meat and fat and meat and fat and meat and fat and just cooked them over the fire. And that's some of the best I've ever had. And then I think probably for me, it's just hard to beat good old fashioned whitetail or elk. And if I had to pick between the two, I'm going to pick elk.
Yeah. I think most people at this point would cook elk. There's been in the last, I would say 5 or so years, there's been a real renaissance in how to actually prepare an elk steak correctly. Yep. And
and that's the thing. It's the common misperception is that you treat it like beef.
Yeah, you don't.
And it's like, I remember growing up, going to my friend Nathan Tenold's house, and his mom would cook up. And I love you, Sherry. I love you to death, but you didn't know how to cook any venison. And she would, we get this venison back, and it would be salted properly and everything, but it would just be tough as nails, and just it wasn't great. You can't treat it like beef. It's a completely different animal with a different grain and a different consistency and different everything. And it's been one of the great joys of my life, learning to cook it properly and then share it with people.
Yep.
And I mean, I've got all sorts of different ways I like to do it, but right now I'm just really high on the sous vide train for venison. I love taking a backstrap and using my vacuum sealer and putting a little bit of rosemary and thyme and maybe a little garlic and maybe a couple pads of butter in there, and then just letting that sous vide rare, like 120, 115 degrees.
Sure.
And then lighting up the big green egg and then just getting it as hot as I can and finishing it off. I think that's one of my favorite things. And there's nobody I've ever made that for that isn't like, this is some of the best meat I've ever had.
Yeah. Sous vide cooking. I mean, it's been somewhat big in the restaurant world for a while, but in the last couple of years, it really has made its way into.
Well, it's a great way to cook a really lean cut of meat too, because you don't lose any of the moisture, and it breaks some of that down and turns it into tender forkish. You can eat it with a fork. I mean, I just love it. And there's people that call it cheating. People that call it's like, why would that be cheating? It's French cooking, man.
Yeah.
And it is really hard to screw up.
That is the good part of it.
I mean, really hard.
Really, you can mess up, but it's kind of hard to. 5 or 6 years ago, at this point, one of the first big things we kind of quote unquote discovered on Meatgistics was smoking your summer sausage until it's 130 degrees, yanking it and putting it in a sous vide cooker.
Okay.
It is the way to go. I would say it's the majority of way Meatgistics guys do it from here on out.
I'm gonna have to try that.
It was actually a user who was like, "Hey, you need to try this."
Yeah.
And I kind of resisted it for a while, and then there were enough posts about it. I'm like, all right, I'm doing it. And I would vacuum seal it, and I'd put it in there. And the first time I did it, I'm like, oh, this is the only way we're doing this from now on. It's so much faster. It gets a better product. And he would tell me for months and months and months, he'd be like, you don't need to vacuum seal it. He's like, just put it in the water. I couldn't get past that. I was like, I'm not doing it.
Well, but it makes a little bit of sense because, boiled, like the Germans boil their sausages. Yep. Like that doesn't surprise me. It's like,
there's no negative effect to not vacuum sealing it. Like it doesn't get waterlogged. You don't lose any of the smoke.
Because you've already
sealed it. Yeah, it's already done. That was my two big concerns. I'm like, it's going to get waterlogged or I'm not going to taste smoke anymore.
Well, and it's just really interesting too, because the one thing I've noticed in traveling is that if there's one thing I can knock about Americans and the way we eat and the way that we consume our meat, especially, is that we're pretty close-minded. We're just meat and potatoes, steaks on the grill, chicken breasts and I mean, a lot of people don't even cook whole chickens. Like it's just not the way we do stuff. We're French fries and potatoes, I mean, French fries and steaks. It's just we're not very open-minded.
Yeah. No, I would
with how we and so when you go around the world and you see how other people do it, it starts, and that it's really good. It starts to open your mind up a little bit. And then there's other stuff that I've seen too, like in Africa. I mentioned pickled seal intestine earlier, right? So I got to spend 2 weeks in a little town in Alaska called Kotzebue, which is up north, and it's home to Inupiat, basically Eskimos, Inupiat people. And I got the great honor of not only getting to hunt up there, but for them to bring me in and to treat me to their native delicacies. So what that means is whale, seal, salmon, caribou, and
those last two sound good.
But it was prepared in ways that were absolutely fascinating. So like the whale, for example, is prepared in a way called muktuk, and it's a little bit of fat and a little bit of meat that is so it looks like a mushroom almost. Like it's got a top, a little fat, and a little bit of meat on the bottom of it, and then they cure it somehow in various different ways, like in like seal oil or whale oil and some salt.
Okay.
And it sounds ew,
Right.
Because it's not, again, Americans. We're just like we eat steak, chicken, fish. That's it. It was wonderful,
Really?
and buttery and melted in your mouth. It was great, but you have to get over the fact that it's whale.
Right.
It's just no different than eating zebra because it's horse. You know what I mean? Which, by the way, is a delicacy in
France,
a lot of the world.
right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so it's like that is really I've really enjoyed seeing the way that other people prepare some of that stuff. What I was getting at though is there's this thing up there that they call black meat, and it's by far the opposite of what I was just talking about. It's one of the most disgusting things I've ever tried in my life. And I love you, all my Anupia friends up there. I love you guys to death, but it was awful. And it literally, they take these strips of seal meat and they bury it on the beach in the sand, and it rots. And it's literally black because it's rotten, and they call it black meat, and it smells rotten. And then they dip it in seal oil and eat it. And when they do it, it's no different than my grandmother making lutefisk. You know what lutefisk is?
I do know what lutefisk is.
Lye-soaked codfish that Norwegians, my grandma thought that stuff was the greatest stuff ever. And it is just pure, horrible pits of hell awful. You know what I mean? And this black meat was like that. My grandma would eat lutefisk and just her face would light up with joy.
Yeah.
The same thing with these guys eating this black meat. It's a delicacy. They dip it in the seal meat oil and they eat it. And their faces light up. I still get goosebumps thinking about how awful it was. You know, so I sit here and talk about being open-minded. I'll try anything once, but it doesn't mean I have to like it. But it has opened my eyes up to different ways to cook and meat.
Yeah, but like you said earlier, I mean,
I'm never going to do black meat though.
You're done on that.
I'm done on that.
Like you said earlier, though, your show is a Anthony Bourdain style where you're not just going to hunt, but you're also going to experience the culture.
And that's part of the culture.
Part of that is
absolutely
is the foods people eat.
Yeah, and honestly, even like things like hamon. We talked about Iberico ham, which they slice off thin. The first time I tried it, I had to kind of warm up to it a little bit because it had a different consistency and a different kind of even flavor than I was used to. It's more rich, all that kind of stuff. But once you try it and you open your mind up for a second, it's amazing how great that stuff is. But I know I have a good buddy who I could take him to Spain and he would never try that,
right?
Because he's a steak and potatoes
not
American.
Doing that.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. Why? It's just a different kind of ham. No. I like my country ham. That's it. And I'm not going to say, but if you're listening, you know exactly who you are, buddy.
Yeah, when I was a kid, the first time I tried, my family let me try prosciutto. I was like, oh, that's nasty.
Yeah.
Now it's like,
fantastic.
Oh my,
right?
I can eat so much of it.
Another one is other meats that I never would have expected I'd like is pulpo, which is quite literally octopus tentacles.
Oh, okay.
In Spain, and that is common. Like you literally can go to a nice gas station in Spain and get pulpo, octopus.
How is it
in certain regions of Spain?
Prepared.
They just grill it, and it is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, we ate
it's
octopus.
with chard. It's like hot coal chard. They salt it and they throw it on the grill, and it's rubbery in texture, and the flavor is it's not a bold flavor.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to get past the fact that you're eating those little suckers, and all it. But it's awesome, and it is a staple in Spain.
So we used to have something we did called Will It Barbecue, where we would grab like weird things. Octopus was one of them. So we've tried a bunch of weird things. Weird, whatever.
Yeah.
Not traditional.
Again, but weird to our standards.
To ours.
Right? Yeah.
The only thing, like your black meat, the only thing I know Austin will never try again, no matter what we do differently, and I'm kind of with him on it, is beaver tail.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. So I've read the old journals of trappers saying how good it was and how much they love it. My current theory on that is they were fat starved.
Yep.
Like they had no
It's kind of
fat.
like I was talking about the mountain goat. I've told other people that I loved mountain goat, and they're like, the hell are you talking about? Don't get me wrong. We never bring it to waste. It never gets wasted. But a lot of times what they do is they'll take it and just give it to the locals. Because the locals love it.
Yep.
Well, there's a reason they love it because they're used to it. Just like the black meat and the muck tuck and all those things. If you grow up on it,
you don't know any different.
You don't know any different. And it's like sauerkraut. My wife loves sauerkraut because she's German and Irish and just grew up on that stuff. I can take or leave.
Hey, you're not in on it.
I mean, I on a hot dog every once in a while, sure. But my wife will just eat it straight out of the bag with a fork.
Yeah, we made
it's like, no thank you.
We made a Reuben brat here once where I mixed in a bunch of sauerkraut.
I love it. Reuben.
It was excellent.
I like that.
Really, really good.
Yeah.
So have you ever, do you have any memorable hunts where they were failed? Where you didn't get the animal you were looking for?
Yeah, that's part of hunting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I try to show that stuff on the TV show if I miss out or if I miss or if there's been plenty of memorable hunts. In fact, some of those grizzly bear hunts I've had really poor luck on. I've been a lot of places and had bad luck. Absolutely.
Is there one that
still
sticks in your memory?
Yeah, there is. There's in Iowa with my friends Lee and Tiffany Lukoski. I missed with my bow the biggest deer of my life, and I still see it in my dreams. I think about it every day. I think about that deer every single day. Absolutely. But again, part of it isn't that it's not about just killing that thing. It's like it's all the work that went into it. It's a week or almost 2 weeks of grinding, waiting for a shot at an animal of that caliber, and passing dozens of other deer to wait for that moment. And when your moment comes and then you screw it up, that's heartbreaking.
It is tough.
But you got to shoot your shot. But
it's important that people see that. It is important that especially novice hunters,
absolutely
understand that
these kids that we're talking about with outdoor mentors and stuff. Man, you gotta show them that, and that's one of the problems with Allie was just talking about Hollywood. Well, all the if there's vines involved, and then it must be awesome. You know what I mean? It's if we show hunting and anything for that matter. I mean, we're talking about hunting in particular, but if we display it and portray it as this. You should only shoot huge deer, and you should only that we never miss. The people that have TV shows that we never miss, and we're he-men or and she women or whatever the female version of that is.
She-Ra?
That She-Ra. I'm not sure, but it's not healthy because it shows kids that they can't screw up, and that's not it. Hunting is your entire existence is really, all these hours and hours and hours and hours that you put in hoping for that one moment. On TV, you only see the moment. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And you might see a little bit of the work and then just the moment, And so I think it's important. And that same thing goes for, you watch these YouTubers or you guys making meat here. We talked about this today. The reason that it's really important to make sausage the first time with some pork butt, if you want to eventually make elk, is to try your recipe first and get it right and practice, because you're not going to get it right the first time. Most likely you might get something that's edible, but you're not going to nail it the first time.
Yep.
And the same thing goes for hunting, and the same thing goes for everything. I mean, it's like my daughter's trying to learn to play volleyball right now, and she's frustrated that she's not awesome, but she's only been doing it for a year.
Take some time.
That's right.
Just like anything else.
Yep.
I've seen a bunch of your episodes. One of the things I really liked, it was you were up hot. I think you were in Spain again. You're going after
Ibex.
Ibex? Yeah. That was at like 15,000, wasn't it?
Oh, you might be thinking of Kyrgyzstan.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, the Ibex are up high too, but in Kyrgyzstan, I went after the Marco Polo sheep, and
that's what it was. Marco Polo
and
sheep.
the mid-Asian Ibex as well. And that was, I had food poisoning, altitude sickness at the same time. And it was crazy miserable. You can't walk 100 yards without losing your breath to the point where you think you're going to die. You have a headache. and you're sitting there going, why am I doing this? What am I doing? And then when you get done with it, you're like, man, I did that.
Yep.
Well, but you were gonna say something about that.
First, there is a certain fun in my mind that comes with not just misery, but especially shared misery.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, we're all doing
That's
this
right.
together. We're all miserable.
That's what makes it okay.
Yep.
When you're in that moment, if you were up there by yourself, that's a whole nother deal, but when you're with a group of people that are all doing the same, going through the same thing, taking every step you're taking, it does make it easier.
Yeah.
There's no doubt.
Absolutely. But my question was going to be, how do you deal with the insane altitude, but you get altitude sickness?
Well, you do. You get altitude sickness and you deal with it.
Yeah.
And I think the hardest thing is experiencing something like that for the first time. So when you experience altitude sickness for the first time, it feels like you might die.
Right.
You're not sure. Your heart is, you're laying there in your tent at night and your heart is acting like it wants to pump out of your chest, to jump out of your chest, and you're sitting there thinking, am I okay?
Mm.
The next time you have altitude sickness, you're like, oh, this is the same thing that happened before, and I know I'm going to be okay. The scariest things are always the first time you do them.
Yeah. And
because everything's new and every sensation is like, is this normal? My daughter, the first time she hunted a deer, she said, my heart is pounding. Is that normal?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it
Absolutely. Is. And then she talks about it still. She's like, yeah, when my heart pounded, I want, and then the next time she's like, my heart pounded again, and I think that's the beauty of travel and experiencing life is it's really, there's two great times. It's like, you'll never forget your first kiss. You'll never forget your first time of doing anything, right? Because it feels different than any other. You chase that for the rest of your life.
Yep. And
I love that. I love that chasing of the feeling because but there's something beautiful in the comfort of doing it the second and the third time and the fourth time because you get better at it every time. I mean, and you go back to talking about first kiss. I mean, I think about kissing Amber Powell and clanking teeth and
Megan
all sorts of stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, and it's like, and now, every time I think I like to think I got a little better at it. You know what I mean?
You hope.
Yeah, I would hope. But that I think that's as far as I want to look you in the eye and talk about that. So, yeah.
So when we were hanging out last night, you were nice enough to put on a great display of fiddling for us. If I gave you the option, right, you could go back on tour with Kenny Chesney and play a stadium full crowd for a week.
Yeah.
Or go to Africa and go after blue wildebeest.
Sure.
Which one are you choosing?
Oh, gosh. I don't know if I could choose, to be honest with you. And I'll tell you why. Boy, I'm thinking about it. If I had to choose, I'm gonna pick the music, and I'll tell you the reason is because my entire life has been I'm a musician first and foremost. I have no recollection of not playing the fiddle. I have no recollection of. I grew up in a musical family. And my grandparents had jam sessions like every weekend at their house, and I played. They gave me a fiddle when I was like 4 or 5 years old, and I just don't. I've always played, and then I started taking lessons in like first grade or something like that. But I've always played music. I've always known from a very early age that that's what I was going to do with my life.
Okay.
I ran away from home to play music. Like that is who I am.
Legitimately? Like ran away from home?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. To go out and chase my dreams. So I'm a musician first and foremost.
Okay.
But I've always been an outdoorsman. I've always been fascinated by the outdoors. I've always been fascinated by history and culture as well. That is who I am in my soul. But my identity has always been, the reason I have a television show and the reason that I'm able to go off and do the financially and just on a time level and on everything, the reason I'm able to go and do these hunts that I do and have the TV show is because of the fiddle. Every road comes back to the fiddle. And what a gift my family gave me. My grandparents and my parents starting me playing the fiddle when they had no idea what they were doing, but what a gift they gave me because it has given me the greatest life that I mean, I can't. I can't. I still have to pinch myself every day that this is what I get. I get to play music and go hunt for a living, and do it on a high level, on the highest level. And what a gift they gave me, because it all leads back to that fiddle.
If I was better at being a podcast host, I'd stop the whole thing here. But I do have one other thing I want to say. They're from the outside.
Yeah,
you're very successful at both. They are extreme, in my opinion. They look very different. One of those, I can only imagine being on the stage in front of thousands of people as they clap and cheer and sing along is a communal, like, oh, I'm getting a buzz from all of us being together and feeling away. Being in the back mountains of Kyrgyzstan, is that what it was?
Yeah.
At 15,000 feet, that is a very introspective. Like, I am doing this myself.
You've definitely touched on something that is, for me, and I can't speak for anybody else why they go to the mountains or why they go to the backcountry or why, but I gravitate towards those brutal, hard, isolated, mental hunts. And the same reason that I love sitting in a tree stand is because, believe it or not, I'm even though I seem like a really big extrovert on stage, and I run around on stage. You see me on my TV show. I'm actually a bit of an introvert.
Okay.
So the outdoors has always, when I went on my first deer hunt, or even when I was a little kid before anybody ever took me hunting, and I would go walk around in the woods and track deer and do stuff like that. That was me seeking silence in my brain. Shutting off from the world, getting out. And that's what hunting has always offered for me. Absolutely. Travel offers that for me. There's nothing I love more than, even though I'm in amongst a million people in Madrid, walking by myself.
You're by yourself.
Just getting lost and walking, just going, seeing where it takes me, and just kind of being in my own brain. Though I love that stuff. So you actually, without knowing it, stumbled onto a big thing. That's why I couldn't necessarily choose between the two, because they're both big facets of who I am, and what makes me tick. I love them both, but but in the end, it's music for me. I mean, and it's why I ran away from home to do it. It's why I left, things like Kenny's band to go chase my own dream and have my own songs on the radio,
right,
and do that stuff. It's because that's, in the end, that's what I set out to do with my life. I'd be lying if I told you that I set out to be a worldwide hunter, with a TV show. That just kind of happened.
Okay.
I always have been an outdoorsman and always will be, but I was a pheasant hunter and a deer hunter, just like most people. I read about these hunts in magazines. That was stuff that other people
did. Right. Yeah.
It wasn't stuff that I did. And it all comes back to the fiddle,
That's awesome. That's a great answer. I think it's a perfect way to wrap up this episode.
Yeah, cheers.
Nick, thank you so much. Been an absolute blast. We got to get together again soon.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And for all you guys out there, please watch the TV show, Nick's Wild Ride on Outdoor Channel, new season coming out. Proudly sponsored by Walton's. I'm so great that they're it's so grateful that they've been a partner for so long. And Nick's Wild Ride on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all that stuff. So I'd love for y'all to come join the Wild Ride and follow me along on my adventures.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Thanks for checking out the Meatgistics podcast. To shop everything but the meat, head on over to waltons.com. To get your meat processing questions answered by experts and enthusiasts alike, head on over to our online community at meatgistics.com. Waltons, everything but the meat.